Welcome to the Show Day Podcast. Today is July 11th, 2019. Starting now, we have less than a month left in the 2019 DCI Summer Tour. What corps are in the best positions after the first few weeks of the season, and which corps are in some of the more challenging positions so far? I'll break that down through last night's results and also take a look at the show. We have one show tonight in Knoxville, Tennessee. All that plus more on today's Show Day podcast. So, as I said, we had two shows last night. First, Celebration in Brass in Ankeny, Iowa. This one's streamed live on Flow Marching. We look at Open Class first, River City Rhythm and Colt Cadets. General effect and visual recaps here. General effect, not close, 23-9 to 22-4. Closer, if I remember correctly, than it has been in years past. But that's saying more about the Colt Cadets than River City Rhythm, because River City Rhythm's on track for their best season yet. Over in visual, a 17.7 for River City Rhythm, a 16.1 for the Colt Cadets, so 1.6 there. Visually, for the Colt Cadets, it needs work. There's especially movement problems, drill problems, and just stuff that they'll learn over the next few weeks, as I believe they have a big break now between this weekend and like 2 weeks or so, and then they pick back up on Open Class Tour at the end of the month. But the big thing with them, I think, that's holding them back is visual. And it's the drill, not that the members can't march it, but they're struggling to do so. And the color guard also needs work, but I think they'll get to that as the season goes on. And also a visual point with the Colt Cadets is the new uniforms that they have this season, which were the Colts' old uniforms. They make them look much better than previously, make them look more modern, and I'm sure, I mean, I can't speak 100% to if this is true or not, but I would think that maybe wearing the new uniforms does give the corps a little bit of a confidence boost as well. Moving over to the music caption, again, River City Rhythm dominating here, 17.3 to a 15.7. And honestly, I think this kind of has to do a little bit more with River City Rhythm than it does with the Colt Cadets in music. River City Rhythm, when you look at what they're doing in music, the drum line is really good. They've been defeating the Legends in their head-to-head matchups, and that's saying something because the Legends are a potential championship winner this year in Open Class. Their percussion is really good. The whole show in general, you can think music, visual, whatever you want. It needs cleaning, but it's July. It's July 10th. Like, they still got pretty much a month to clean that, a little less now. But I think they'll definitely be in good condition come Open Class Championships. That ballad they have in the middle of the show, that is really, really good. The solo, and then you've got the big hit that they have, the big ballad hit. It really is good. I really wish they would have done more with the concept, but for what they have as the core and to head in the right direction, they've got the right thing going for them this year. And just one more thing I want to point out with the Colt Cadets, and it's in this music caption, and it's that they play well most of the time, and there's the problems, and as I said, they need cleaning, especially in visual, but also in music. But musically, they seem better than I remember them being, and really all around, it seems like it's a pretty good show for them this season. Heading over to the world class side of things last night, we had 6 corps: Bluecoats, Vanguard, Blue Stars, Mandarins, Colts, and the Academy. General effect. We've seen this in almost every single show this summer so far. Whether it's Open Class, World Class, general effect has not really been a point of discussion. It's kind of just been, okay, 6/10 separate 1 and 2, 6/10 separate 3 and 4, or whatever, but there's just not been a lot of conversation in General Effect. And if you look at this show, the smallest margin between two cores in General Effect is 6/10. Not General Effect is deciding the show this season. It always does, but this season it's really deciding it. When we look at the top, Bluecoats 6/10 over Santa Clara Vanguard. When we go over to visual, Vanguard does kind of get the upper hand over the Bluecoats, but it's not by a ton. 2/10 in visual proficiency, 2/10 in visual analysis, but the Bluecoats win color guard by 3/10. Overall, Vanguard wins visual, but it's only by half a tenth. Cannot make up for that general effect margin. And honestly, I can see where they're coming from in general effect with the Bluecoats being so far ahead of Vanguard. I think Vanguard's concept is a bit easier to grab. You just have to think of the Bluecoats a little bit more. It's just that they're telling the story of the Beatles, but as themselves, kind of. And if you just think of it that way, it makes sense. But I think Vanguard with the whole revolution thing, it makes sense, but you still need a little bit background as well with it. Moving down the line here, there is a little bit of mixing up between the Colts and Academy at the bottom of the charts over in visual. You see Academy actually passing Colts in proficiency and analysis by pretty big margins, especially in proficiency 5/10 and color guard. They lose by a tenth, but still get visual over the Colts last evening. In music, Mandarins, they defeat the Blue Stars in brass 15-8, 15-5. Analysis 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Percussion, as we keep seeing, Vanguard very good in percussion. Their percussion is godly, as they tweeted out last night. 3/10 above the Bluecoats in percussion, but Bluecoats do win overall music 25-6-5 to 25-5. Overall totals, we have the Bluecoats at an 86-3, Vanguard 85-6. Blue Stars is 79-6-5. They won their first head-to-head meeting of the season over the Mandarins. Mandarins score 77-5. Colts is 74 even, and the Academy is 73 even. I want to just talk a little bit about some of these shows. I did tweet out some of what I thought in some of these shows. I'm not going to point out everything I said, but I'm going to point out some of the things. You can check out my other analysis on your own time. So, the Academy, I'm going to kind of go in reverse order of how they perform. So, the Academy, there's some really good moments in that show. There's the Bridge Over Troubled Water ballad. That's good. The London Bridge is Falling Down thing that appears throughout the show, that also is good. But it seems like, and this might just be watching it, maybe not performing it or designing it or whatever, but it sure seems like the show is a bit too difficult for the talent that they have currently. And that's not necessarily anything to do with the talent, the members. It has to do with the design staff. That the concept's a bit difficult to present when you don't necessarily 100% have the cast you need to make it happen. When we look at the Mandarins, they had the visual package together last year, and they had to connect it with music. Music, they were struggling a bit. And this year, I feel like they're excelling a bit musically more. I mean, you see them defeating the Blue Stars in brass, but you see them down in percussion. Percussion's the big thing that they just can't get. And then I feel like they're lacking a little bit visually. I feel like they should have a little bit more to that show. The Blue Stars, they're good this season. I like their show better than last year. The show's very musically accessible. When I say that, I mean, like, you can kind of see what they're doing musically and how it kind of connects visually. And it's honestly fun to watch the show. When we look at Vanguard, as I said, the percussion is godly. It's amazing. And the show is not finished. It's not even close. Like, just watching it, you can tell it's not finished. And finally, the Bluecoats, or I should say second to finally, the Colts as well. The Bluecoats, that show grows on me every time. I keep saying this every time I see it. There's a strong music and visual presence in the core, and one of the things that I got a bunch of comments on Twitter is I said it's one of the best design shows of the modern drum corps era, and it seems as though many are agreeing with me on that. And Yeah, and it's not necessarily anything particular in the show. It's just how it's designed. It's just the music design, the visual design, everything is just like spot on. And finally, the Colts. It's one of the best shows I've seen from them, and there's so much power and energy musically in that production that it kind of gives you that vibe that we usually don't get from those cores right outside of finals. Those cores, not necessarily like 13, 14, but those cores on down. And the Colts are definitely moving their way up into that 14, 13 range this year. And I would not be surprised for them to be just 2, 3 points out of finals when it's all said and done this season. The second show last night was Core Encore in Ogden, Utah. Weber State University. This one was at Open Class Cores 2 here again, Battalion and Colombians. Battalion pulled away a little bit more last night. The Colombians actually end their tour this Saturday. I said the other day that they finish in a few weeks. That's the Battalion. They have like another week or two of tour. The Colombians end their tour Saturday, so they've kind of got to make their presence felt over the next their last show day in Denver. But the Battalion, they're really excelling this year. 1.1 over Colombians in general effect. You've got a little bit more than that in visual, 1.15. So it sure seems like the Battalion are setting themselves up for future success. I'm not sure how much we can read from that, because the first step to that is that they have to go to World Championships, and that's not something that they can just snap their fingers and it happens. You have to be in financial shape, I guess you could say, to do that, and also just have the commitment, I guess, from the members to be able to do that as well. And if they can get both of those things and can go to championships in the future, as long as those don't cut away from the design of the show at all, the Battalion are right there with cores like River City Rhythm, and they're almost actually right there with Southwind, Louisiana Stars. Those like not necessarily medalist world class or open class cores, but those cores right outside of there that could medal any year. Like if they bring out a good show, they can medal, and the Battalion are fitting themselves right into that category. I just wish we could see them compete with some other groups other than the ones that they'll compete with in the Colombians and then other groups in the coming weeks. Just to kind of finish this open class thing off, music, we've seen Colombians gaining some on the Battalion here. If the Battalion were in shape in future seasons, music's the thing they gotta work on, because they're not necessarily lackey there, but they're kind of not necessarily at par where I think some of these other open class groups would be. Colombians win analysis by 6/10, just to kind of prove that point a little bit farther. They do win music. The Battalion do a 17.55 to a 17.45. Overall final score 59 even for the Battalion. If they could break like 62, 63, 64, maybe even 65 by the end of the season, that would really, I think, really boost their confidence. And then also the Colombians 56.65. We'll see how high they can get by this Saturday in their final show of the 2019 tour. World class at this one, same 6 cores we saw the 2 previous nights. Blue Devils again dominating everything. Who's going to come close to them, honestly, at this show? The Blue Knights are still pretty far back. Visual, people have said that if the Blue Devils do not win the championship, it could just be visual. But I think that if you compare their visual program to some others, say their color guard program to cores like the Bluecoats and Crown was struggling a little bit. They haven't competed at all. I mean, we can't really read a lot into Carolina Crown. I'll get to that on the leaderboards in a minute, but we can't read a lot into them. But if the Blue Devils can keep this color guard score up, they're at an 18 almost, and there's a month left in the season. Like, that score is going to be high, and I would not be surprised if that's a 19-8, 19-9, maybe even perfect 20 by the end of the season in color guard for the Blue Devils. Moving down the line here, we saw the Troopers win visual over Pacific Crest on Tuesday night. Last night, Pacific Crest gets that back win visual over Pacific Crest wins visual over the Troopers, that is 21-8 to a 21-1-5. Cascades do defeat Genesis once again in color guard. In music, again, the Troopers are better than Pacific Crest, kind of what we've seen all season, just kind of validating itself once again. The Blue Devils up top in brass, 1.1 over the Blue Knights. Again, the Blue Knights' best caption in music. Troopers ahead of Pacific Crest, and then you've got Genesis and Cascades in brass. Analysis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then percussion, Cascades do not get Genesis on this night, so there's not two placements out of shape, with Troopers defeating Pacific Crest, but Troopers do defeat Pacific Crest here by 0.2. Genesis 5th, 13-1, Cascades 12.6. Up at the top, Blue Devils 0.5 ahead of the Blue Knights now. This was 3/4 the night before. It's also 0.5 in analysis. So really, the Blue Knights are good in music, and so are the Blue Devils, but the Blue Knights' best captions music, that's why we're seeing them closer here. Overall totals, 86.45 for the Blue Devils. Good score. Really, really good score, I should say. 80.2 for the Blue Knights. First score in that middle tier. You think Cadets, well, they've been off, so I'm not sure we can consider them a lot, but you've got Blue Stars, you've got Mandarins, you've got, let's just throw in Phantom, for sake of this, and the Blue Knights are the first group to cross 80 in that mid finalist tier this season. Pacific Crest has 71.9. They move away from Troopers at this one. Troopers down to 70.5. Genesis is 63.3, and Cascades is 60.95. I thought the Troopers show would develop as the season goes on, and it seems like it is, but I think Pacific Crest is so good. Their show's designed so well this season that I think it's going to be hard for the Troopers to get up there to Pacific Crest. And it's really just going to be one of the biggest battles to watch, though, as the season goes on. So here on the World Class Leaderboard, as of last night, as I was saying, the one thing I want to point out on here is the scores that haven't competed for a few days. You've got Crown, you've got Boston, you've got the Cavaliers that have not done any shows since Friday or Saturday. Crown returns to action Saturday, Boston returns to action tonight, which I'll get to in a minute, and Cavaliers tomorrow night in Dubuque. But it sure seems like their scores are holding steady over pretty much most of the field. Take away Crown, because they haven't had any shows, if you really think of it. They've had Lexington, and after that, Orlando was rained out, and then 7, 8, 9, I'm saying that as dates, 10, 11, 12, they're not in action. So that score, I expect it to be passed by Boston easily tonight. Boston should get up in 83s, 84s. But that score's it's still holding pretty good, but I'd like to see them do more shows in the future. Also looking down the line here, the Cavaliers, that score is not holding up too well against everybody else, just the Blue Knights passing them, but still some of those scores not coming close, so I guess it is holding up pretty well, but maybe not as not solidifying their spot in the top 6. Going down to that 12-13 finals bubble range, Phantom Show was on the 9th, so was Spirits, so that margin's still true. They were at the same show, etc. Colts, Academy, Pacific Crest, Troopers, I think are all going to be on the outside looking in, but I think the Colts are in really good shape for this season and also for future years as well. On the open class side of things, not a whole lot of change here. Colt Cadets in action, they're in 12th, River City Rhythm in 8th. Battalion actually jumped River City Rhythm last night. They're now at 15-9 even. And then also the other corps in action last night was the Columbians. They're now in 11th. Tonight, just one show, Drums Across the Smokies in Farragut, Tennessee. This is in the Knoxville, Tennessee area. Farragut High School, pretty successful band program that they are. This one will get underway 7 o'clock Eastern Time with the Welcome and National Anthem. 3 open class scores here once again. Heat Wave, Southwind, Louisiana Stars. Did Southwind pass back Louisiana Stars, or do Louisiana Stars go 2-1 against Southwind this season? Looking at the world-class lineup, Jersey Surf, Spirit, Phantom, Boston, and Music City. Boston returns to action after a few days off. They haven't had a competitive show since Friday in Lexington. How high can they get? Can they get, if they're up in the 85s, they're in the championship contention. Even if they're in the 84, I don't know if we can roll them out, but if they're still in the 83s, we might have to discuss that a little further. Looking at Phantom and Spirit, can Spirit pull any closer? They've got to pull closer, because if they don't pull closer, they're just going to fall off. And then Music City and Jersey Surf as well here. It seemed as though Surf might catch Music City, and it's not that they're totally pulling away, Music City is, but it's that that Martin's not getting any closer for Surf. Thank you for watching the podcast today. Just a few things now. Make sure to visit my website, drumcorpscentral.weebly.com, for all the latest updates from the DCI and DCA summer tours. Scores, schedules, leaderboards, and more can all be found on my own personal website about all things drum corps. Make sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Drumcore Geek, and subscribe to the Show Day podcast on YouTube, where this podcast and more will be posted. Finally, leave your thoughts in the comments sections, questions, input, comments, etc. All would be greatly appreciated. So thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your Thursday.